Do we want to jump right in, or are there any big picture stuff that you want to get out of the way first?
Like, besides Ryan Day choking again?
Well, like, that's the thing is, there's even the Ryan Day, and then there's how he got there. Can we get to the how he got there first?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Like, why did Ohio State not? They've got an easy button, guys. It's a big red easy button.
Because Ryan Day is an emotional coach who has a giant chip on his shoulder. And instead of just winning a football game and going to Indianapolis for a chance to get revenge against Oregon, he decided it was more important to try to prove a point, because for the last 3 years, he heard all about how Michigan was tougher than his team, and it punched him in the mouth, and it physically dominated him. So he went into the offseason with a brilliant plan of trying to be more physical, trying to be tougher, establish more of a running game. He brings in Chip Kelly, and all this stuff was working perfectly all season long until his offensive line suffered like 1 billion injuries. And I've been harping on this show for the last month, they can't run the damn ball. And I talked about it going into this matchup. I didn't think they were going to be effective running the ball against this defensive front. But Ryan Day said, oh, yeah, watch me. And then he failed to run the ball against this Michigan defense inside the tackles, watched as they called plays that had Quinshon Judkins getting to the perimeter and picking up 10, 15, 10 yards, and then decided, I'm not doing that anymore. That has been way too effective. I'm going to go back to not getting anything between the tackles. I'm not even going to bother throwing the ball to Jeremiah Smith. I'm not going to bother throwing the ball to Emeka Egbuka because I'm a big, tough guy, and I'm going to show him how tough I am. And he blew it again. Because for whatever reason, when Ryan Day sees that maize and blue helmet, he is a deer in the headlights who is terrified and doesn't know what to do. And, I mean, they're still going to get in the playoff in all likelihood, but I don't know that Ohio State fans care at this point. Like, I've seen people have said it's like national title or he's getting fired. I'm telling you guys, he might not be the coach for the first-round game. Chip Kelly might be your interim coach in that first-round game, wherever they're playing, whoever they're playing. They are pissed off, man.
They should be. $20 million roster, and that's the result you get. I think what Chip said and what Tom said is right there. Like, yes, they have had pretty debilitating injuries that don't affect them in most games, but when you face a really good defensive line, like Mason Graham and those guys for Michigan have, then it really comes back on you. And like we talked about this on the big game breakdown on what, Tuesday? I think we did. Yeah, because it was the weird.
Yeah, it's holiday week. All days
right.
I don't know what day it is anymore.
So, and we talked about this, and it's like, could Michigan win this game? Probably not. If they did, it's because they dominated guard, center, guard. Like they own the A gaps inside, and they forced Ohio State to do things they didn't want to do. And ultimately, that's only half right, because I think Ohio State just kept trying to smash the ball inside. Now, Tom is probably right here that they did it because they wanted to prove how tough they were. However, we also talked about, like, are they a little bit worried about their ability to pass protect? Are they worried about how Howard is playing? And given some of the interceptions that he threw today, I think that worry internally, if it was there, was also pretty justified. But man, like, they had a 15% rushing success rate. Basically, every time they handed the ball off, with very limited exceptions here. I mean, if Mikey, if you click on over to comparison and then click advanced, you can see it there on our screen share. The buttons at the top. 15% rush success rate. Basically, every time you hand the ball off, it's a wasted down, guys. Mm-hmm. Like, that's crazy. I mean, run stuff's there. 35% run stuff rate. That's not great, right? Look at your leverage rate here. This is just not something that's going to allow you to win a football game. And yet they're very much in the game because the defense pretty much suffocated Michigan's offense. And, had some pretty nice, had some pretty nice interceptions as well. But I mean, some of them were pretty bad Davis Ward's passes, but like, good God, under 300 yards at home against Michigan is really, really rough. And you would think that they would be able to scheme something open. And I know Michigan has been playing better football in recent weeks. Part of that, though, was hard to discern because who they were playing. I mean, Northwestern is really pretty bad. And they crushed Northwestern, which maybe they don't do if they play that game 6 weeks ago. So credit to Michigan for coming up with the plan. Like, it was a very narrow path to victory that Michigan could have. It was the one that we laid out in Big Game Breakdown that we did not think would happen, because we thought Ohio State could get into a different gear, and they could not get into that gear. Michigan owned them at the line of scrimmage, especially with their D-line against Ohio State's offensive line. I'm kind of shocked, but I'm really surprised that they couldn't find some way to hit some more explosives to really break that thing open, and they just kept letting them back in it.
Michigan averaged 4 yards per play, rushed for 4.1, threw for 62 yards total, had 2 red zone interceptions, scored 10 points on 4 red zone trips, and won. That's an app. I mean, listen, Michigan deserves credit for doing what they had to do to win that game. And good for them. I know it feels great, but Ohio State lost that game. Michigan did not win it.
Okay. So that was what I was going to say. How much we watch so many of these games. We always have these thoughts about sports, but like, deserve was ringing around my head during this game, because I just felt like at some point Ohio State was going to win. And I kept thinking about what the cheap win reaction was going to be, or, how do you reset going into the Big Ten championship game, and all these other pieces to it. And I think it was when they were gifted 2 interceptions on back-to-back Michigan drives? It was like a stretch of, interception, then Will Howard throws an interception, but then Michigan throws another interception, and then they end up having to settle for a field goal after not being able to do anything with it. Yes. Like, when you see Ohio State refuse to act like a contender, to act like the big bully on the block, you don't deserve to win that game anymore. I mean, there's a number that Ohio State could have hit that Michigan could not reach, and they totally blew hitting that number with all the missed opportunities.
And it probably just starts with a 2.
Yeah, like 24. Okay.
Yeah.
They scored 10 points on Michigan.
And this is the other thing. You mentioned this. This was at home.
Yes.
Yeah. In 21-degree weather.
With no Loveland.
All
for
right.
Michigan.
Ohio State scored 10 points on Michigan. So did Fresno State. Arkansas State scored 18. USC scored 24.
Oh my God.
Minnesota scored 24. Washington scored 27. Illinois scored 21. Michigan State scored 17. Oregon scored 38. Indiana scored 20. Northwestern only scored 6. So, I mean, Ohio State did outscore Northwestern against Michigan. So it wasn't all bad.
And to bring it back, like, no Loveland, no Will Johnson.
No, yeah. I mean, Michigan did not have the only thing it has in the passing game. And it was obvious because they couldn't throw the ball. Like, they had no options. All they could do was try to run, and they couldn't run the ball effectively. Like, Mullings finished with, 118 yards, but 27 of them came on that one spectacular run he made to get them into field goal range late in the game. But other than that, they weren't successful at anything. Michigan didn't do anything in this game, and Ohio State still lost it. I'm not even an Ohio State fan, and I am furious.
Well, you did call it Eberflusian. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to
It might be PTSD. Yes,
I do, especially
not using the timeouts there.
Yeah, like
the timeout management at the end. Like, why is he waiting until after the 2-minute warning? Because they're within field goal range. They have an excellent kicker. It's not like, I mean, you're hoping for a turnover, but call them before the 2-minute warning. Give your offense some time to move down the field if you get the ball back. It's just absolute dumbassery, man. He's so bad in these games when he's playing Michigan. He makes terrible decisions, and he does it every single year, and it costs them over and over again. And that's my point. Like, even if they go on to win a playoff game or two, if you're an Ohio State fan, you know what you're getting next year. Why do you want to bring this back? It's time to move on.
2 things. Number one, I'm not wishing this for you, but had your mind drifted to Chicago Bears head coach Ryan Day?
Oh, screw you.
Okay.
Screw you.
because I do listen. This is where
Can you imagine how? I mean, the Bears can't beat the Packers as it is. If they hire Ryan Day, we're never beating the Packers again.
I'm just saying, Kevin Warren's like, I don't know. I mean, I heard this guy was good as gold. Come on, we were buddies. We had a great. I mean, do you remember what I did for you during that 2020 season? I mean, come on. I do think that there's like, Bud, do you see it with that whole like national title or bust conversation?
So going back to the summer when we started doing the CBS Sports Network show, I was always like, I think they really have a right to be disappointed if they don't make the Final Four or if they don't make the Final Two. If you lose to, at the time, what we thought was maybe like an absolute, A-grade Georgia team or, something like that, then to me, there was really no shame in that. Like,
we had a top four. And here's the thing is like of the top four, all four are probably going to make the playoff, but you feel way differently about the other three than you do about the fourth.
Right. Exactly. And I feel like you would have been okay with it if you played at a level that we traditionally would identify as like a legitimate national championship contender level in prior years. Like this year, it's pretty clear that none of these teams are as good as the national champions from the past, certainly 5 years, and probably going back a little further. And that's just across the entire sport. Like the sport it's not watered down. It's just the talent is more spread out now. So maybe you can call that watered down if you want to. But a lot of the argument why I thought the fire Ryan Day stuff, prior to today was ridiculous is because he basically only lost to teams that either actually won the national title or were playing it like a pretty clearly defined from a power rating standpoint, national title level. This Michigan team ain't that. And so now, like this is to me is the first like real egg they have laid. And the fact that it comes with the most expensive team they've had, and that is something that I think he's kind of lost that shield a little bit of, hey, look, man, we play at an awesome level pretty much all the time. Yes, I've lost to Michigan a bunch of years in a row. This is the bad one to me, like the legitimately really bad one, because that's not a great Michigan team, and they didn't have some of their best players.
We're going to see a stat from Kyle Rowland. He's college sports reporter at Toledo Blade. Since Ryan Day said Ohio State would, quote, hang 100 on Michigan, the Buckeyes are 0-4 against the Wolverines and have scored a total of 84 points. So they still haven't hit 100 yet.
Let's start a new drive to 325.
I mean, maybe they'll win the whole damn thing. I don't know. I really can't.
That would be so awkward, though. Like, can you imagine that? Like, they win the national title, but Ohio State fans still kind of want to fire him afterwards.
Kicking, quarterback play, and the offensive line injuries have troubled them today. Also, coaching. Like the actual management of the game was pretty questionable. And to the chat, I don't think they're going to win the whole thing. Obviously, like if they can't block like that, but how many teams that they face in the playoff are going to have a better D line than Michigan?
I think that
maybe Texas, like maybe Oregon.
I think it's a general. I think it's a general distrust. I just don't. I mean, like you're right. They could. The high end talent is there, but to get all of those pieces moving in the right direction, I just don't. I don't trust it.
Do you think that Howard was messed up after that hit?
I think he could have been, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give them excuses. Like, this is not a game that if you're Ohio State, you can lose. I mean, you're, 3-touchdown favorite at home? But his play went, like, from kind of shaky to just the plane has crashed into the mountain after he got rocked, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was tough. I am watching the Houston BYU game, yes, because we still have college football.